I hope you know that you can create, build, and grow a candle business from home without ever creating a perfect candle. And I really hope this is liberating for most of you because, man, did I really struggle with this in the beginning. And I was under the impression that if I didn't have a perfect, flawless candle, then I wasn't good enough. And especially being here on YouTube and sharing my journey from the very beginning and already feeling like I was in a position to just be the absolute best candle maker ever and know everything, that was definitely something that I struggled with in the beginning. And I have learned over the years of experience and knowing my products and knowing the supplies that I'm working with and really seeing the little changes in the different variables that you can change within the candle making process. There's been a lot that I've learned, and I also realized that there is no such thing as a perfect candle. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. and I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. And I do need to preface before I move on to the rest of this video because there's no way I'm letting any of you walk away from this video thinking, okay, Erica said there's no such thing as a perfect candle, so I don't have to worry about testing. I can just make whatever I make and sell that and then not have to worry about it. No, I have been preaching testing on my channel for years now, since the very beginning. I think testing, learning, understanding your product is such a vital part of being a candle maker, and it's the responsible thing to do as a candle business owner because we have to be aware that our candles are dangerous. We are basically selling controlled fire. I have talked about that as well. And there are so many different variables that can change up the actual performance of your candle. And I think that this, when I really thought about it and I was thinking about, is there such thing as a perfect candle? I promise you that any candle you give to me, it doesn't matter if it's a $100 candle, a $500 candle, a $1,000 candle, just the best top of the line, whatever candle, I guarantee that I could make that candle burn very, very poorly based on how me as the consumer is treating it. There are just certain things beyond the actual process of creating that candle that we just have no control over. We have no control over how a customer burns the candle, how long they burn it for, if they trim the wicks, if they trim the wicks too short, if they have a draft or wind blowing like a fan or something in the room, or even the climate that that customer is in. If it's a much warmer, humid climate and they're burning that candle and it's causing the candle to melt and burn faster and heat up quicker, that's just something that we do not have control over. Now, I don't want you at this point thinking, well, then what do? We can't sell anything. That's not true, because look at the candles that are on the market. Look and think about when you were just a regular consumer, not a candle maker, probably didn't give any thought to the way a candle was burning, much like I did. I don't think I thought about a candle burning beyond, oh, I should probably blow out that candle, or oh, I want to light this candle because I want it to smell good in here. Never thought about trimming the wicks. All of my candles had black soot all around the sides, and my instinct and my thought about that was that's just how candles are. That's just how candles work. And talking with my customers in person at markets, and we're educating on trimming your wicks, a lot of times I'll bring that up and they're like, oh yeah, I thought that that's just how candles were. And I'm sure that you were the same way too as a consumer buying candles. We just didn't think about it. That was just something that we just didn't think about. We just lit the candle, we enjoyed the smell, we blew it out when we were done, and that was that. We never trimmed the wicks, we just kept lighting the same carbon buildup wick every single time. And if you've ever burned any Bath & Body Works candles, I remember those flames would get crazy. I've seen videos of other YouTubers with candles in the background, and man, I just hyper focus on it. I'm like, that flame is crazy. Why aren't you trimming that? That's all I can see. That's all I can focus on. But as a regular consumer, you look at that as being normal. And yes, us handmade business owners, we are trying to do our best to make sure that we are creating the best performing candle as possible. But what I don't want you to get hung up on is that perfection, that I have to follow everything step by step. It has to be absolutely perfect. If the candle flame wiggles a little bit, it's an automatic no. If there is even remotely any soot that comes from it at any given point, it's an automatic fail. And again, there's a complete difference between a candle flame that's going wild and crazy, obviously over wicked, and a candle that when you walk into the room and your draft hits it and then the candle wiggles and then there's like a tiny, tiny bit of soot that comes off of it. I promise you that's normal. I've, had a lot of little dancing flames, and it just, as long as the jar isn't freaking so hot that it's going to explode, as long as the flames aren't absolutely crazy, throwing soot everywhere, and having that constant black smoke coming off of it, which I have made candles like that before, and I definitely know the difference. I have also made candles before where if you did not trim the wick, it was going to be a very, very poor performing candle. And I've kind of gotten this midpoint with my candles to where somebody could burn the candle and not trim the wick at all. And I'm sure it obviously is going to burn hotter. And I also have the people to where if they do trim the wicks in between, it's going to be a good performing candle as well. So I kind of have figured out this middle ground, because one of the things that always kind of stuck in my head was, okay, so we want to make a candle to where we are educating people to trim their wicks, but we also have to make sure that if they don't trim the wicks, it's still going to be a good performing candle. But that's a really hard middle ground to be in. If you are understanding kind of where I'm coming from with that, that was always a question that I had. I'm like, okay, well, am I making a candle for people who trim their wicks, or am I making a candle for people who don't trim their wicks? Because if you continuously light a candle, if you wick a candle to have the wicks trimmed every time, it's going to be a good performing candle. But if you continuously light that candle without trimming the wicks and it's a poor performing candle, then what is it? Is it good or is it poor? That was always something that I kind of had a hard time, that I struggled with. And I went from one extreme to the other in my candle making. When I first put out my candles, I'm sure that they were overwicked. I'm sure that they burned pretty dang hot when I sold them. And then I got really nervous after getting a couple of people reaching out to me with videos and showing me kind of how my candles were performing, and they were really, really hot, and it really scared me. So I completely did a 180. I changed up my formula, and then I kind of was on the other end of the spectrum, and I had created candles that were more known to tunneling, and suddenly I got more people reaching out to me about their candles tunneling. And I did not want to have a candle that was overwicked, and I also didn't want to have a candle that was underwicked. So I was kind of in this weird trying to figure out my candle formula, trying to figure out the best formula that was going to work for my candles, to where if somebody didn't trim the wicks, it wasn't going to be an inferno. And if somebody did trim the wicks, then it wasn't going to tunnel. And that was kind of the place that I was trying to get to. And if you're a candle maker, I hope you can relate fully to this, because this, I believe, has been the most challenging part of the actual physical creation process of my candles. And I think that I actually have kind of gotten to that point where I think that my candles are in a very good middle ground, to where they are going to perform well, either if somebody's trimming the wicks or not trimming the wicks. And I think that that is something that, again, took me a little while to get to. And I still do not think that I have perfect candles. I still wholeheartedly believe that, if you burn my candles a certain way, you burn it for 20 minutes, blow it out. Next day, burn it for half an hour, blow it out. Next day, trim the wicks down to little stubs and then burn it, it's not going to perform well. It's going to completely tunnel and be terrible. So I know that the way that a candle is performing, and I do know also that most people are going to burn a candle pretty normally, pretty average. They're going to let it burn at least for a few hours. And that's also why when I trim the wicks for my candles, I actually leave them a little bit longer than 1/4 of an inch. I actually leave them somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch, because I want to make sure that in that first burn, it's not going to set them up for tunneling, in case there's the people that are wanting to, you know, trim the wicks. I don't want to set them up for tunneling. And that is kind of how I've tweaked my candle making that is different from the norm of how you should technically be setting and selling your candles, and making sure that, you know, it's trimmed to 1/4 of an inch every single time. And I understand that that's, you know, that's not typical to do. That is kind of technically maybe not right to do, but it's what works for me and my candles, and I've gotten really good feedback on my candles. Even friends of Chris that I'm sure he told them about trimming the wicks, but they didn't, and they were still just like, yeah, it was great. And we got to look at the candles, and they burned it all the way down and it looked fine. But I think I really just kind of wanted to make this little video diary, journal, whatever I call it, and just kind of, you know, talk about this topic. What do you feel about this topic? Do you think that there's such thing as a perfect candle? Have you struggled with that? You know, do I make it for people who trim wicks? Do I make it for people who don't trim wicks? Are you trying to find that middle ground, like kind of like how I've figured out with my candles? I really, really, really would love to hear feedback from you, and just kind of your take and your experience that you've had so far as a candle maker. And yeah, I think I'm gonna end today's video right here. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to leave it a big thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Memory Box Candle Co. And I will see you in my next video.